The desert wind never stopped at forward operating base Falcon. It scraped across the concrete walls, slipped through the razor wire, and carried the kind of silence that never meant peace, only waiting. This was one of the outer installations of the United States Army, positioned far from civilian routes and far from questions. Officially, it was a logistics and reconnaissance hub. Unofficially, it was something else entirely, something no one spoke about unless they had clearance high enough to ruin their sleep. And tonight, Gate 7 was on duty. Floodlights burned white over the checkpoint. Two armed guards stood beneath them, rifles angled, eyes scanning the empty road like it might suddenly decide to become dangerous. Private First Class Mason leaned against the barrier console and sighed. Another boring shift. Sergeant Cole didn't look up from his tablet. That's how you know something about to go wrong. Mason smirked. Or nothing ever goes wrong and you're just paranoid. Cole finally glanced up. Out here, paranoia is the job. A few soldiers passed behind them, heading toward the mess hall. Someone laughed in the distance. A helicopter rotor thumped somewhere beyond the compound walls. Normal night. Until it was. From the far end of the dirt road, where heat shimmer turned distance into illusion, a figure appeared. At first, Mason thought it was a mirage. The desert played tricks like that, shapes that weren't there, movement that wasn't real. But then it came closer. A woman. Walking alone. No convoy lights behind her. No escort vehicles. No radio chatter announcing arrival. Just a single silhouette cutting through dust and floodlight glare. Sergeant Cole straightened slowly. "That's not on the schedule," he muttered. Mason squinted. "Maybe she's lost." Cole didn't answer. Because lost people didn't walk like that. They walked uncertain, hesitant. This woman walked like she already knew exactly where she was going. As she reached the outer perimeter, details sharpened under the lights. She wore a standard combat field jacket, worn, faded at the edges, tactical pants, military boots coated in dry earth. A black duffel bag hung from her shoulder, too neat for how rough the rest of her looked. No visible rank insignia. No name tape. No unit patch. That alone made Cole's expression tighten. "Hey," Mason called out, stepping forward slightly. "You need to stop right there." She stopped immediately. Not startled. Not hesitant. Just compliant. Like she had expected the command. A wind rolled through the gate, lifting dust between them. Mason raised his voice. "This is a restricted military installation. State your identity." For a moment she said nothing. Then she looked up. And something about her eyes made the air feel heavier. Not emotionless. Controlled. Like she had learned a long time ago that emotions were expensive in places like this. "Arrival confirmed," she said calmly. "Gate 7 checkpoint." Cole frowned. "We didn't receive any inbound confirmation." She didn't react. That silence was her answer. Mason gave a short laugh. "Okay, I don't know what unit you think you're with, but—" She interrupted without raising her voice. "I'm not here for a unit." That made both guards pause. Slowly, she stepped forward and placed the black duffel bag on the inspection table. It landed with a soft, heavy thud. Then she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a card. Matte black. No shine, no hologram, no visible chip edge. Just a silver eagle embossed in the center, minimal, almost erased, like it didn't want to be seen. She placed it on the steel surface. Sergeant Cole stared at it. "What is that supposed to be?" Mason picked it up between two fingers like it might stain him. "Looks like a prop from a movie." He turned it over. Blank on the back. No name, no barcode, no QR code, nothing standard. Cole leaned closer. "That's not a military ID." The woman's voice stayed steady. Scan it. Mason chuckled. Scan it with what? Our imagination. A few nearby soldiers started watching now, boredom shifting into curiosity. Cole reached for the handheld scanner anyway. If it's fake, we flag it and move on. Mason rolled his eyes. It is fake. Cole placed the card under the scanner. A soft beep. Then another. For a second, nothing happened. Mason smirked. Told you. The screen flickered. Stopped. Then rebooted on its own. Cole frowned. That's weird. The scanner beeped again. Longer this time. Then, the base alarm system stuttered. Not the outer siren. Not the routine perimeter alert. Something deeper. Something that had never been triggered at Gate 7 before. The floodlights above them flickered once. Then twice. Mason looked up. Cole. The scanner screen suddenly went black. Then filled with red text. Access request DETSCTED. Cole's grip tightened. That's impossible. This is a perimeter device. The woman didn't move. She simply watched. The wind died down for a moment, as if the entire desert was holding its breath. Then the entire gate system responded at once. Every security light around Gate 7 turned red. A low mechanical hum rose from beneath the ground. Mason stepped back. What did you do? I didn't do anything, she said. Cole's voice sharpened. Then why is the system reacting like this? She looked at the scanner. Because it recognized me. That sentence didn't make sense. But the fear that followed it did. Suddenly, the main base alarm activated. A deep, layered siren echoed across the entire installation. Not panic level. Not drill level. Something higher. Something classified. Soldiers across the base stopped mid-motion. A radio burst alive with static, then cut out. Then every screen on Gate 7's system turned white. And a single line appeared in bold red. Priority override, Omega Black. Mason's face went pale. That doesn't exist in the system. Cole stared at the screen like it had insulted him personally. That level was removed years ago. The woman finally picked up her bag again. Sergeant Cole stepped forward quickly. Stop, you are not authorized to. A new message appeared. Authorized individual confirmed. Then another line. All command level access granted. Silence hit the gate like a physical force. Even the wind didn't move. Mason whispered, "Who are you?" She looked at him for the first time directly. Not cold. Not angry. Just distant. That depends, she said, on who's still alive inside your command chain. Before anyone could respond, the sound of engines roared through the base. Vast. Heavy. Approaching. A military jeep tore through the inner checkpoint and skidded toward Gate 7, dust rising behind it. It stopped abruptly. The door opened. Colonel Daniel Reeves stepped out. Instant silence spread. Every nearby soldier snapped to attention instinctively. Even Cole and Mason straightened without thinking. The colonel's eyes went immediately to the woman. And for the first time that night, his expression changed. Recognition, concern, and something closer to disbelief. He walked forward slowly, stopped in front of her. The entire gate waited. Then, in a move that made every guard freeze, Colonel Reeves saluted. Not casually, not informally. A full, formal salute reserved for command authority above standard military hierarchy. The woman returned it. Calmly, like it was routine. Mason's voice cracked quietly. Sir, who is she? The colonel didn't look at him. He only said one sentence. Open the gate. Cole hesitated. "Sir, protocol." "Open it," Reeves repeated firmer. The barriers at Gate 7 unlocked. The heavy metal arms rose slowly. And the woman walked forward, passing the guards, passing the floodlights, passing the moment that would later be described in reports no one was allowed to fully read. As she entered the base, Colonel Reeves fell into step beside her and spoke quietly so only she could hear. "You shouldn't have come here alone." She didn't slow down. "I didn't come alone," she said. A pause. Then, "I came early." The colonel went silent, because that answer meant something no one at Gate 7 was prepared to understand. Behind them, Sergeant Cole watched the woman disappear into the compound. His hands were shaking slightly. Mason finally whispered, "We just let her in, didn't we?" Cole didn't answer immediately. Then quietly, "No." He swallowed. "We didn't let her in." A long pause. "We were cleared out of her way." And deep inside the base, far beyond Gate 7, something unseen had already begun to wake up. The doors sealed behind her before anyone realized they were already closing. Inside Forward Operating Base Falcon, everything felt normal for exactly 3 seconds. Then the silence changed. Not louder, not sharper, just heavier. The kind of silence that meant systems were no longer waiting for permission. They were already acting. The woman walked through the inner corridor of the base beside Colonel Daniel Reeves. The lighting above them flickered faintly, like the building itself was unsure whether it should acknowledge her presence. Every soldier they passed did the same thing. Stop. Stare. Whisper. Because word spreads faster than orders in places like this. The Gate 7 incident. Black card. Colonel Reeves saluted her. That last one was the one people couldn't accept. A junior officer near the wall leaned toward another. "Who is she supposed to be?" The other shook his head. "No idea, but nobody salutes someone unless they outrank you by a lot or by something they don't talk about." And that was the problem. No one had her rank. No one had her name. And yet the base had already changed its behavior around her. She didn't look around. She didn't ask questions. She simply walked forward like the building belonged to her memory, not her arrival. At the Central Operations Hub door, Colonel Reeves stopped. "Command is inside," he said carefully. "The senior staff are waiting." She nodded once. "That's the problem," she said. Then she pressed her black card against the scanner. Nothing visible happened. No beep. No flash. No sound. For a second, Reeves frowned. "It's not responding." The sentence didn't finish. Because the entire corridor lights turned red. Every door lock in the wing clicked simultaneously. Not sequentially. All at once. Like the system had already decided the outcome before anyone asked. Then the card finally reacted. A thin pulse of blue light spread across the walls like veins activating. And a new message appeared on every embedded screen. Black access protocol engaged. Reeves stepped back slightly. That protocol was decommissioned. The woman didn't look at him. "It was buried," she corrected. A low mechanical hum came from the floor beneath them. Then the voice system activated. Not the standard base AI. Something deeper in the infrastructure. Something old. Identity VRIFID. Reeves went still. "Impossible," he whispered. The doors to the command hub opened by themselves. Inside, the room was already full. Senior officers of the United States Army stood around the central holographic table. Generals, intelligence analysts, tactical commanders. All of them turned at once when she entered. The reaction was immediate. Confusion, then tension, then recognition of something they couldn't place. General Marcus Hall stepped forward first. "Colonel Reeves," he said sharply, "you bring an unauthorized civilian into a restricted command zone." Reeves didn't answer. That alone made several officers uneasy. The woman stepped forward before anyone could escalate. "I'm not unauthorized," she said calmly. A younger captain frowned. "We have no record of you in the system." She tilted her head slightly. "That's correct." That answer landed wrong in the room. One of the intelligence officers leaned forward. "No record means no clearance. No clearance means—" "Means your system is incomplete," she interrupted. The holographic table flickered. A map appeared, then restructured itself without command input. It zoomed far beyond the base perimeter, across desert terrain, beyond controlled zones, into an area marked in red-black classification. A hidden valley. No official label. Just coordinates and silence. General Hall narrowed his eyes. That site is under inactive surveillance. She looked at him directly now. "It was active 6 hours ago," she said. The room went still. A tactical officer stepped closer. "That's not possible. We would have received—" "No," she said quietly. "You would have received it if your communication chain wasn't compromised." A pause. Then tension began to shift. Not toward confusion, toward suspicion. Because the implication was worse. Someone inside had blocked information. General Hall turned slightly. "Colonel Reeves explained this." Reeves didn't move. Didn't speak. That silence was more damaging than any accusation. The woman reached into her jacket and placed something on the table. Not the black card this time. A sealed metal case. Old. Military grade. No visible markings except a small symbol, an eagle encircled by a broken ring. The room immediately reacted. A few officers took involuntary steps back. One whispered that insignia was retired. General Hall's voice dropped. "Where did you get that?" She looked at the case. "My father kept it," she said. That word, father, shifted the room again. Because military families were common. But not in contexts like this. Not with that object. She pressed her palm on the case. It opened instantly. No lock sequence. No biometric scan. Just recognition. Inside were files. Old physical documents and encrypted drives. Stamped Project Nightfall Level Omega Black. The air in the room changed instantly. One analyst muttered, "Nightfall was a theoretical contingency program." Another corrected him quickly, "It was shut down." The woman shook her head slightly. "No," she said, "it was never shut down." She pulled out a single file and placed it on the table. Only hidden. The hologram above the table flickered violently. Then stabilized. New data overlaid itself on the map. Military installations. Supply chains. Covert surveillance grids. And something else. Something that made multiple officers step back at the same time. Internal tracking routes. Connected not to enemies, but to their own network. General Hall's expression hardened. "What is this?" Her voice lowered slightly. "This is betrayal." A silence followed. Then the first real crack in the room appeared. A communications officer suddenly looked down at his console. "Sir, I'm detecting unauthorized access in the base network." Another officer turned sharply. "From where?" The answer came a second later. Every screen in the command room flickered, then displayed the same message. "System restructure in progress." Reeves finally spoke. Very quietly. It's begun. General Hall snapped. What has begun? The woman closed the file slowly and said the words that made the entire room feel smaller. Whoever killed my father, she said, is already inside your command structure. The lights dimmed again. Not malfunction. Control. Somewhere deep inside the base, mechanical locks began engaging in sequence. Doors sealing. Corridors isolating. Sections cutting off from each other like the base was being divided into controlled compartments. General Hall looked at her. You did this. She shook her head once. No. A pause. Your system did. Then she looked at the officers around the table. One by one. Like she was counting something invisible. And finally said, now we find out who is left when the system finishes sorting you. A final alarm sounded. Not outside. Not inside. Everywhere. And the base went into full containment mode. But this time, it wasn't protecting them. It was isolating targets. And someone in the room had just been marked. The containment alarm didn't stop. It layered itself over reality like a second heartbeat, steady, mechanical, unavoidable. Inside the command hub of Forward Operating Base Falcon, officers of the United States Army stood frozen as the base began to reorganize itself around them. Not defensively, not randomly, deliberately. The woman stood at the center of the holographic table, watching the system behave like it had finally stopped pretending to be neutral. General Marcus Hall stepped closer, his voice low but controlled. This is still a U.S. military facility. You don't have authority to restructure its internal systems. She didn't look at him. That's where you're wrong, she said. A beat passed. Then she added, I don't restructure it. A flicker of light moved across the table. I wake it up. Colonel Daniel Reeves shifted slightly at her side. That small movement was enough for the room to notice. General Hall narrowed his eyes. You've been avoiding a direct answer since you arrived, he said. Who exactly are you? The room went quiet again. Even the system noise seemed to soften. The woman slowly lifted her gaze. And for the first time, there was something different in her expression. Not emotion, but weight. Like the truth she was about to speak had consequences beyond this room. My designation, she said, was never meant to be public. She tapped the table. A file opened instantly. Not requested. Not accessed. Already waiting. The title appeared in red. Project Nightfall Directorial Lineage. Several officers stepped back instinctively. One analyst whispered, That's impossible. Nightfall was compartmentalized above Theater Command. She interrupted without looking at him. It was never a project, she said. It was a succession. That word landed harder than any explosion. General Hall frowned. Succession of what? She finally turned to him fully. Control. A silence stretched across the room. Then, a soft mechanical chime came from the ceiling speakers, followed by a second. Then a third. The system was counting down. Colonel Reeves suddenly spoke, his tone tight. We don't have time for explanations, he said. The base is entering phase lock. A younger officer turned sharply. Phase lock. Reeves didn't answer immediately. Because he didn't want to. Then finally, it means the system has identified internal compromise and is isolating command layers. General Hall's expression hardened. Isolating from what? The woman answered immediately. From itself. The holographic table shifted again. New lines appeared across the base map. Sections of the installation were turning red. then gray, then black, entire wings going offline. Not power failure, not sabotage, segmentation. A voice suddenly echoed through the command room speakers. Cold, neutral, system generated, internal threat DATSCTD. Every officer turned instinctively toward the ceiling. The voice continued. Trust verification initiated. The woman closed her eyes briefly. Too late, she whispered. General Hall stepped forward. What does that mean? She opened her eyes again. It means the system is no longer asking who we are, she said. A pause. It's deciding who we were allowed to become. The lights flickered again, then stabilized into a deep amber glow. Emergency partition began sliding down outside the command hub. Heavy steel barriers sealing corridors one by one. The base was cutting itself into compartments. And in doing so, it was trapping people. One junior communications officer suddenly stood up. Sir, I'm losing contact with Sector B. Wait, Sector C is offline too. Another officer checked his console. We're being segmented from the outer grid. General Hall snapped, by whom? No one answered immediately, because the answer was starting to feel obvious. The woman stepped away from the table, and for the first time since she arrived, she moved toward the perimeter glass overlooking the internal corridors. Soldiers were visible outside, running, shouting, doors locking behind them without manual input. One man slammed his access card repeatedly against a reader that no longer responded. Then the screen above him turned red, and his door sealed shut. He was gone from view. General Hall saw it too. This is insanity, he said sharply. Revert the system now. She shook her head once. I can't. Reeves looked at her sharply. You ca. She turned slightly. No, she said. Because I didn't initiate phase lock. A pause. That means someone else did. Silence collapsed across the room. Then the implication hit. If she didn't do it, and the system didn't do it alone, then someone inside had triggered it. General Hall slowly turned toward the officers in the room, studying them, measuring them. For the first time, suspicion wasn't theoretical. It was operational. A soft static crackled through the speakers again. Then a new voice appeared. Not system-generated this time. Human. Distorted. Familiar. You shouldn't have brought her here. The entire room went still. The woman's eyes sharpened instantly. General Hall looked around. Who said that? Reeves didn't move. That was the first mistake, because stillness can reveal alignment faster than speech. The voice returned. You activated Nightfall by opening Gate 7. A pause. Then, and now it will finish what it started. The holographic table suddenly flashed. A new alert appeared. Core network access, COMPROMICD. Then another. Directorial override, attempt DETCTED. The woman reacted immediately. She placed her black card back onto the table. The entire room systems responded instantly. Lights stabilized. The segmentation pause slowed. For a brief moment, control returned. General Hall stared at her. What are you doing? She didn't look up. Competing, she said. The systems around them began a fight. Not physically, digitally. Like two command authorities were colliding inside the same infrastructure. One trying to contain, one trying to override. The screens in the room fractured into layers of conflicting data. Then, a new message appeared in the center of the hologram. Second authority, deity. Reeves stepped back slightly. That movement didn't go unnoticed. The woman looked up slowly, and for the first time since arriving at the base, she looked directly at him. Not with anger, not with fear, but certainty. General Hall followed her gaze. "Colonel Reeves," he said sharply. Reeves didn't answer. That silence confirmed everything. The woman spoke quietly. "You weren't just assigned to this base," she said. A pause. "You were placed here." Reeves exhaled slowly. And for the first time, his voice wasn't military. It was personal. "I didn't kill your father," he said. No one moved. "But I knew who did." That sentence detonated the room more than any explosion could. General Hall snapped, "You withheld critical intelligence." Reeves looked at him briefly. "I was ordered to." The woman's expression tightened slightly. "By who?" Reeves hesitated, then said the name. And the command room went silent in a way that felt irreversible. Because it wasn't just a person. It was a structure, a level above command, a system inside the system. And suddenly, the base stopped feeling like a facility. It felt like a trap that had finally closed. The lights dimmed again. The system voice returned. "Calm. Final. Phase 2 initiated." And somewhere deep inside the base, something began unlocking that had never been opened before. Not a door, not a vault, but a war protocol that didn't recognize allies anymore. The moment Phase 2 initiated appeared across the command systems, the entire base changed state. Not metaphorically, structurally. Inside Forward Operating Base Falcon of the United States Army, doors that had never been manually opened before began unlocking in sequence. Corridors that were supposed to be dormant lit up with red guidance strips. Internal blast shutters slid into place with heavy mechanical groans. The base wasn't defending itself anymore. It was preparing. And no one inside had given the order. The woman stood at the center of the command hub, the matte black card resting on the holographic table. The air around her felt tighter now, like the system itself was watching her more carefully than anyone else in the room. General Marcus Hall stepped forward, voice sharp. "Explain Phase 2, now." She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched the holographic display shift again. New structures appeared across the base map. Not defensive positions, not troop locations, but kill corridors. She finally spoke. "Phase 2 isn't escalation," she said quietly. "It's correction." Colonel Daniel Reeves stood slightly apart from the others now. His posture had changed. Not relaxed, but no longer pretending. General Hall turned toward him sharply. "You knew," Hall said. "You knew what this was." Reeves didn't deny it. That silence again. The same silence that had already cost too much. The woman looked at Reeves. "You didn't just recognize Nightfall," she said. "You helped bury it." Reeves exhaled slowly. "I helped contain it," he corrected. A pause. "And if I hadn't, it would have activated years ago." That sentence landed heavy. Because it implied something worse than betrayal. It implied necessity. The system voice returned again, softer now. Not announcing. Confirming. Directorial authority required. The black card on the table pulsed once. Then again. The room's lights dimmed further. General Hall stepped back slightly. "What is it asking for?" The woman finally picked up the card. "This isn't asking," she said. "It's remembering." She turned toward the central interface and placed the card directly into the holographic core. The reaction was immediate. The entire command hub darkened for half a second. Then, everything lit up in white. Not red, not amber. White, clean, absolute. Every screen across the base synchronized into a single interface. And a new designation appeared. Nightfall Core Online. One of the junior analysts stumbled back. This system, it's not military infrastructure. It's deeper than command net. Another officer shouted, it's rewriting access hierarchy. General Hall turned sharply, stop it. But no one could, because it wasn't running on their authority anymore. The woman spoke quietly. You can't stop it, she said. It was never waiting for permission. The base shuddered slightly. Far below them, deep mechanical systems engaged, old ones long sealed, never acknowledged in official engineering records. Reeves finally spoke again. This is the point of no return, he said. The woman looked at him. No, she replied. This is the point where it stops pretending it wasn't built for this. The hologram expanded violently. A full satellite feed opened. Multiple global regions highlighted in real time. Unknown installations. Hidden logistics chains. Encrypted military shadows that didn't exist in official databases. General Hall stared at the display. This is impossible. The woman shook her head slightly. No, she said. It's classified. A new signal appeared. External threat vector confirmed. Everyone froze. Then, the entire base alarms shifted tone again. Not internal. External. Incoming. One analyst shouted, we've got movement outside perimeter, multiple fast-moving targets. Another voice over comms, unidentified aerial assets approaching low altitude. The base responded instantly. Automated defenses began rising from hidden ground ports. Turrets, shield arrays, missile interception systems, all activating without human command. General Hall turned toward her. This is your system, shut it down. She didn't move. I can't, she said again. A pause. Because I'm not the one who triggered external response. Reeves turned sharply. Then who did? The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. The same person who killed my father, she said. The lights flickered violently. And for the first time, the system interface split. One half labeled Nightfall Authority Director. The other, Unknown Override Entity. A digital war began inside the base. Screens fragmented. Data streams collided. Security feeds looped and distorted. And then, the voice returned. Not system. Not military. Human again. But clearer now. You inherited something you don't understand. The woman stepped closer to the table. I understand enough, she said. A pause. You built a weapon inside your own command structure. The voice responded immediately. And you are the last fail-safe. Silence hit the room. Even General Hall stopped moving. Reeves closed his eyes briefly. Because that part he already knew. The woman's expression changed slightly. Not fear. Not shock. Recognition. You made me the trigger, she said quietly. The voice replied. No. A pause. You were always the trigger. The base shook again. Harder this time. A massive blast echoed somewhere far outside the command hub. Then another. And another. The external threat had arrived. General Hall snapped into command mode, all units to defensive positions. But Reeves shook his head once. No, he said. They're not attacking the base. A pause. They're activating it. That sentence changed everything. The woman looked up sharply. Reeves, she said, what did you do? He finally met her eyes. And for the first time, there was no defense left in his expression. Only truth. I followed protocol, he said quietly. That protocol, she replied, doesn't exist. Reeves nodded once. It does now. A deep mechanical tone echoed through the entire base. Not alarm. Not warning. Activation. Then the final system message appeared across every screen. Nightfall final stage, operation continuing without human oversight. The woman stepped back slightly. For the first time, her control wasn't absolute. Not lost, but shared. And that was more dangerous. General Hall looked between them. What does final stage mean? No one answered immediately. Because outside, the base perimeter began to open. Not breaches, not destruction. Opening. Like the entire facility had been waiting for something to arrive. The woman whispered. It means the system stopped asking who we are. A pause. It's asking what we're for. The lights went out. Completely. Then, in total darkness, every weapon system in the base armed itself at once. And for the first time in history, Nightfall didn't belong to anyone inside the room. It belonged to what was coming next.